He was one of the best traveled friars of the 15th century, going year after year from place to place in Italy. He stood in the midst of crowds that some say numbered up to 30,000 people on occasion. He was partly responsible for a renewal of faith that changed the social landscape of his world for a generation. His name was Vincent of Siena. What? You were expecting someone else?
Of course.
We remember Bernardin of Siena as one of the greatest preachers of his age, the apostle of Italy, and one of the 4 pillars of the observance. You know his story as well as I do. Bernardin was born into privilege, but orphaned as a small child. He took degrees in canon and civil law, well on his way to a secure and quiet life. But when he was 20, plague struck again. This time, the plague did not take away his parents, but led Bernardin to give up his wealth and put himself at risk to care for the sick. 2 years later, he joined his servant friars and eventually took up itinerant preaching. In the Gospel today, Jesus is speaking with the Father, and he uses the plural to talk about his disciples, his apostles, those he sends into the world. Your word is truth, he says. As you sent me into the world, so I sent them into the world. And I consecrate myself for them, so that they may be consecrated in truth. We remember that one famous son of Siena, that one famous preacher, traveler, reformer. And we forget that Christ never intended for any of us to proclaim the truth by ourselves. We proclaim the gospel best as a fraternity, a brotherhood in mission. 2 by 2, we not only proclaim the truth, but become ourselves a sign of the gospel message. Vincent of Siena is not famous, but I believe he is a saint. For years, Alvin, he was the socius of Bernardin, the traveling companion who worked behind the scenes to make sure that everything was ready for the big moments when Bernardin stepped up to proclaim truth, all in capital letters. Bernardin's truth often included condemnations as well as calls for repentance. Vincent was never known to have condemned anyone, but he proclaimed a lot of gospel truth in his care for his brother and in doing what he could. When Vincent died, Bernardin, that hard-nosed preacher, wept openly and long at the loss of half my soul. Brothers, someday some of you may be famous for the power of your preaching for your reform of the order. But I pray that God will remember me as God remembers Vincent and Bernadette, as one of many, many friars who tried to do as best I could what God gave me to do.